part of the very informal interview.
Okay.
Everyone's sitting around, so welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. I always like to get started with a little, background on you and your family and where you grew up and your earliest memories, possibly in California or in Iowa or something. So you can start there.
Well, I was born in Sioux City, Iowa, and eventually we moved to Ottawa, Iowa, which is about 40 miles south of Sioux City. And in Ottawa, my father ran a restaurant. He owned the business, and it was right by the railway station. It was called the Railroad Restaurant. And I became quite precocious, I guess, and people would have me sing songs. So my dad would stand me up on the counter and I would sing and perform for them because I had no fear at all. Anyway, my sister, Mary, was born when I was 4. And my mother and father thought better of my public life. So Dad bought a dairy out on the edge of town. And we had that dairy until I was, probably 15. And then we moved to Des Moines. And from there, we moved out to Fullerton, California, where I went to high school.
Was this the Depression era?
During the Depression, we were at the dairy. And I think part of the reason we had to give it up was people just couldn't pay. And actually, Dad hung on to it until about 1938. I guess his reserves lasted that long, and then we went to Des Moines, where he had some connections, and then we decided to come out, or my folks decided to come out to California.
Did the Depression hit the family pretty hard?
Our family, we were never hungry. Oh, clothing was a big item, and I didn't have very many clothes. When I was in high school, I didn't have very many clothes, so that was kind of hard on me. And then the war came along, and my mother and father both were in the war effort. Dad worked and mother worked at a feeder plant in Brea. The place was called Chicksan, and it provided different things for aircraft.
Hang on a second. Are you picking up the ticking sound of the... We're on again. So was California a bit of a culture shock from the Midwest?
I remember the orange blossoms. My sister characterizes as we died and gone to heaven. It was the blossoms were just blooming, and it was really nice.
Were the people any different?
Yes, I think so. Iowa people are pretty, well, you know what? The picture with the pitchfork, how Iowa they are. And that pretty well shows the way people were there. There's no frills, and I still am that way. For instance, it seems to me that people make a big deal of like a baptism or something, and we didn't think anything of it. So you were baptized, that's what you're supposed to do, and so what? But that part, I think, the California people are different from the Iowa people.
So what was Fullerton, California like in the early 40s?
During the 40s, gearing up for war. I graduated in 41,
Where'd you go to high school?
Fullerton Union. I think there was only one high school in town. Then I started JC, but I didn't get very far. I went into things that helped well, for one thing, I was a telephone operator, long distance. Then I went to work for Douglas Aircraft, and it was different because by that time we had enough money to buy things, but during the war there wasn't that much to buy. And we lived in a 3-room, not 3-bedroom, 3-room duplex. The beds came out of the wall, and you just couldn't get any place else. Once you had a place, that was it.
So what do you remember most about when Pearl Harbor was bombed that day?
I remember it was Sunday, and we had gone for a ride, my folks and my sister and I. And I didn't think we had a car radio, but we must have because we heard about it. And of course, we were horrified and, thought, well, this is it, At one point, we learned that, or at least it was rumored that we had been threatened by a submarine out just off the coast, not very far from Fullerton. Was probably about 30 or 35 miles from the beach, and we didn't realize it. I think our neighbor was scared. She must have known something about it, but we didn't. So
So with Fullerton, the town gearing up for war, would you say that most of the boys your age were being called up?
oh yes, yeah.
Was it a time of hysteria, or was it exciting for most
I
of them?
think it was probably more exciting. Some of them went into the service before graduation. And one thing that was really sad, classmates, our Japanese classmates, were sent to internment camps. And I always felt really bad about that. It just seemed so excessive.
Were they some of your friends that were sent?
Well, one of them was class president, and not especially my friends, but I knew them.
Do you remember the class president's name?
Fumio Fujimoto.
Pretty Japanese sounding. So, at what point, so after the war started, did you stay in Fullerton?
Yes.
And your jobs included, you said that you were a long-distance operator.
Mm-hmm.
And how would you, for your family, how would you describe, the rationing and the things that went on? And
Oh, yes. Well, we used mineral oil for oil, which we didn't know how bad that was for us. And sugar wasn't really a big problem. there were 4 of us, so we had, coupons, gas rationing, meat rationing. We we didn't ever suffer
Good
from.
pause after the bell. So what's that?
Chair does speak on the sound.
Yeah. Try it. Maybe they'll think it's the flare. Yeah, try not to move. So at what point, did you see a lot of boys in uniform walking around?
Oh,
all the
yeah.
time?
Mhm.
And there were people from your class that had gone in. How would you describe your family? Was it a patriotic family? Did your father follow the war closely? And did, had he been in the Army in the First World War? Or?
No, he had a bad heart.
So
He tried to get into the Navy, but they wouldn't let him.
So at what point did you meet Ted? How did you meet Ted Bachenheimer?
What point did I meet Ted?
Yeah.
A friend of mine from Ottawa, Iowa, that I had started school with, she and I kept in touch. Her family came out to California around the same time my family came. And we kept in touch and saw each other from time to time. And she went to English class with Ted at LACC. LACC was a college it was specialized in acting. It had a theater.
Let's press pause for a second. Yeah, you might want to repeat that Los Angeles Community College, or whatever.
All right.
Sorry.
I guess that's what it was.
Yeah, LACC.
And it specialized in drama.
Okay, we have to repeat it. You have to say the whole name of the school.
Yeah, well, you're not ready, are you?
Yeah, we are now.
Oh, so Jean and Ted went to Los Angeles City College, and they shared an English class, and they dated. So when the Pearl Harbor occurred, Ted immediately, I guess, enlisted, and shortly after that got into the paratroopers. And he and Jean corresponded. And so I asked Jean if it was all right if I wrote to him too. So I did.
Why did you want to write?
Well, it was just something that we did, just a fun thing to do. I think almost all girls, 18-year-old girls did then.
What, writing boys in the service?
Yes, I think almost every girl that I knew liked the idea of writing to a young man in the service.
How did the correspondence evolve? Yeah, sorry, what's
The
it?
fire is starting to
Crackle a bit?
just change the direction of the mic here.
Okay.
We did.
We're not rolling right now, but what year did you meet? 42?
Yes, it must have. We must have met in 1942 because we corresponded, and I don't remember exactly what all we said.
Keep going.
Okay.
Press pause for 1 second, and this is the last.
Okay, we're rolling.
Right, so if you could say that.
I first met Ted Bachenheimer, and it must have been 1942. And so he and I had been corresponding, and he came to my house, Actually, he came to my house before he went home on furlough and stayed in Fullerton for maybe 3 days. He stayed at the California Hotel, and he and I just went to lunch together, and we walked a lot. And I was working at that time at the famous department store down in the basement, and he would come down and watch me, and then we would just talk and talk and talk, and then he went on home to Hollywood to be with his family. And I think I must have gone up there also to see him. I'm sure I did, because I met his family. And his father was a very mild man, and his brother was very exuberant. His mother was very dramatic. She wanted to be an actress and had been an actress. And I guess Klaus had been too in Germany. So
You mean Wilhelm or William, the husband?
Wilhelm was Ted's father, and he was a concert symphony conductor, I believe. Ted told me that he could memorize a score and just conduct. And I liked him very much. And Klaus was just a young, what was he? Maybe, I guess he was probably about 16, not quite 16 at that time. And he went on to get in the Navy later. And so then Ted had to go back to Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And we kept writing. And I can't remember if he asked me to marry him that first time or if it was the second time he came out, because I think it must have been the first time, because then he sent me a ring. And the second time he came out was when his father was very ill. His father had a heart attack and was in Cedars of Lebanon Hospital. And he died, and I was able to be with Ted.
Before you go, but tell us, what struck you about Ted? Like, what did he look like? What was his demeanor? What kind of young man was he?
Ted, when he first came, that first time, he and I just seemed to be delighted with each other. Oh, we giggled an awful lot. And as I remember him, he was so level-headed. And that's why I'm just amazed at some of the things that he did with the Dutch Underground. But he was so down to earth as compared to the Hollywood dramatic and over emphasizing things. He was just sensible, and he was very intelligent, and he was very kind and considerate and charming.
What did he tell you about his family background?
Ted didn't tell me very much about his family background, but the material that I've read from his brother tells me that he apparently had a harder time during the time that his father was away from them when Hitler came into power, because it appears that they had to go and get food, hot food from some source, which I didn't have any idea about. He didn't tell me that. Maybe he just didn't think of it.
Did he tell you where he was born or where the family had come from?
No.
But clearly his parents must have had accents and they were foreign born.
Oh, yes, yeah. Well, I knew that, of course, I knew he was born in Germany, but I didn't know exactly where. I got the impression that they had gone to Vienna. And I still think perhaps that's what they did before they were able to get out of Europe.
Why did they have to get out?
Well, the reason they needed to get out of Europe was that Ted's father couldn't get work because he was Jewish. And I guess the Hitler regime just wouldn't let Jewish people work. But he got work, I think, outside of Germany.
You could repeat that last line.
The reason.
Because of the clock, the reason why.
The reason his father had to leave Germany was that the Hitler regime wouldn't let the Jewish people work, and that was one of the ways that they got rid of them, I guess.
How would you describe the family? How they reacted with one another? Was it a close family? Was it? It sounds like the parents were very dramatic people. You know, what was your impression of them as a family?
My impression of Ted's father was that he was level-headed too, as Ted was. My impression of his mother was that she was really wanting to be an actress. She would have liked it much better if I had been from the Hollywood scene rather than from a family that had been farmers and peasants. But Klaus was just a teenager, a normal teenager. He had a car that was kind of a roadster car that he zipped around in a lot. And I believe they were a close family. That wasn't really something that I focused on especially.
It's very faint. You can listen, but I mean, it's the only time you even notice is when it goes on and off. You know, but it's. Is that fine?
Do you want that refrigerator turned off?
Yeah, I'd love to. Can we press pause here, just so we don't have to. We don't have to really repeat. So how long was the courtship? You just had gotten involved with.
Oh, the courtship. How long was the courtship, I wonder? I don't know. Not very long. It was quite a bit longer than the marriage, though. We started corresponding sometime in 1942, and I would think perhaps it was quite early. I believe Ted sent me a compact for my birthday, which is 2nd of February. And so it probably was 7 or 8 months maybe before we got together and became engaged.
And how old were you there?
Let's see. In 42, I was 19.
Did your family like him?
My family was my family.
Did they like Ted?
Yes. My family liked Ted very much.
And so so you got engaged, and he went to. Did he, in your conversations with him, if you could remember, did he seem eager to be in the service at the time?
With my conversations with Ted, he was very patriotic, and much more so than I. And I forget, I said something one time that wasn't very patriotic, I'm afraid. And he was horrified. So I think it was just a matter of course with him to be in the Army and fighting for the country that he had adopted.
You were saying that he'd come home and his father had gotten sick.
Yes. His, the second furlough during the time that we were engaged, his father had a heart attack, and he had been given a furlough, a leave. I think, what do they call it, a family emergency leave of some kind. Anyway, and when he came out, he and I were together. I remember he had some place that he had to go. It seemed like it was some kind of a military reason that, anyway, we went to that, and we went to various places together. And then I stayed with my girlfriend and her family, Jean, and he called late one night and told me that his father had died. And so he wanted to come and be with me. So I went and sat and talked with him in his car, which was a Buick convertible. It wasn't his, it was his folks's. And then I went to the funeral with him, of course. And I think I was a help. At least he told me I had been a help to him. So after that was finished, he went back to Fort Bragg.
Was he really broken up by the death of his father?
Oh, yes. Yes, he really loved his father and counted on him. And so sometime after that, then we decided to go ahead and get married. And I had to borrow the money. I took a train. And it took, I think, about 3 days to get back there. And so then he arranged for me to live with a family that he knew. so that's what I did. And we were married in the minister's home in Fayetteville, North Carolina, on March 23rd, 1943. And in May 1943, he left.
So you lived in Fayetteville for how long?
Well, I stayed a little bit longer after he left. I had gotten a job at the Capitol Department Store in the office. And I guess I just wanted to wait to be sure that it wasn't just training or something and he'd be back. But he didn't come back.
The wedding you had, was it attended by any other people, or was it a very small?
Oh, it was very small. The lady and her husband, the Biggses, and Mary Biggs, and I think there was a young boy. I believe they all were there, but that was the extent of it.
Now, how often would you see him? You got down there in March and you stayed until May. When he was in training, would you see him?
Well, he would come home after. It would be like he had a job, and he would come home every night. So I would see him in the evenings. And one time he brought, I don't know if he brought the whole thing or if it was just part of a doe he had killed so that we could have meat. Because as I told you, meat was hard to come by. And I don't know, I couldn't have fixed it, I'm sure. Or maybe Mrs. Biggs did. I'm not sure. I don't have any vivid memory of it being great. And I remember that we didn't have very much money. And so, of course, we didn't eat all of our meals at the Biggs. We ate at a drugstore and had a lot of soup, as I remember, and we ate a lot of their crackers. Anyway, we were happy until he had to go.
Did he tell you about training and the things that they were doing during the day? Did he seem to like being a soldier?
Ted told me about training. When he first came to visit me, we went to the beach, and he showed me how they had to fall, and he showed off for me. He would roll, you know, like you have to roll if you fall, I guess. Anyway, and he didn't tell me about shooting, but he told me about just that much, really, not a whole lot.
Would he wear his uniform when you walked on the street with him?
Oh yes, when we went walking, he would have his uniform on and his baggy pants and boots with the big toes. And
what were the origins of you had a nickname at the time?
oh, when we first met, as I told you, we giggled a lot, and when he would say a penny for your thoughts. And so it just kind of dwindled down to my nickname turned out to be Penny. So that, I don't know, that's how he always addressed me, was Penny.
In addition to, I'm sure he knew that, being a soldier during wartime, he was going off, but were you two an idealistic couple? Did you talk about the future? Was there talk about?
I remember that Ted told me in a letter that he didn't want me to forget him. I think that must have been when he was with the underground, because I got the impression that he was doing things that were very dangerous. And I remember distinctly kind of getting it kind of gave me a turn when he said that he didn't want me to forget him. So I just can't help but think that's about when he was it Nijmegen where he was?
I think so.
Somewhere like that,
So before,
or close to Nijmegen.
when you left originally, I think you left in '43 to go to Italy. Did he write home? Did he write you from? Did he tell you about what was going on? Was there a progression of? That's what I'm trying to, and I'll talk over the clock. But did he start off being characteristic of optimistic? And I mean, did the letters change over time, or were they pretty consistent? And what kind of letters did he write?
When he first left, he didn't go to Italy. He first went to North Africa. And one of the first letters I received was when he was wounded the first time, and he laughed, well, I don't know if he laughed, but he said that he got wounded in his backside and kind of made a joke of it. And that must have been sometime around when Rommel was there. I'm not sure.
In North Africa?
In North Africa. And then they did go to Italy, and I believe Anzio, and from there they jumped into Belgium, was it? I'm not positive. And then on into Holland to the Market Garden.
When did you first start hearing about some of his exploits? Because there seem to have been articles that had been written. And
Well, Ted didn't tell me about the exploits, really, because he couldn't, for one thing. In fact, he couldn't even tell me where he was. But I found out about his going behind the German lines through articles. And that's when the people from the Times came to his mother's house. And I happened to be visiting at her place then. And that's when they took the picture of me and asked me all sorts of questions, and which I can't even remember if I answered them very well. But that was when I found out a little bit about what he was doing.
would he, in any of his letters, were they descriptive about what was going on in battle, or some of the friendships that he had, or?
The letters that I received were descriptive of where he was, like not what locality was in, but he was apparently billeted in a home, and he wrote that he was very tired, and this was the first time he'd had a chance just to stop and think. And he was in an Italian home, he told me. And he was sitting by a fireplace. So I guess I got a vision sort of a little cottage with a fireplace. And no, he didn't tell me a whole lot about the places that he had gotten to.
What was being a war bride like at the time? I'm sure you were not alone.
Well, just kind of trying to do my part, I guess. After he was missing, I went to the Red Cross and wanted to join and get over there and find him, which was as goofy as any 19-year-old, or I guess I must have been 20 by then, would be. I was just a typical teenager too, and I just kind of goofy.
Were you, from the moment that he left, could you describe, maybe how you were feeling? Was it a constant state of anxiousness or anxiety, or because your husband went off to war, it's not a normal thing. Maybe it was for that time.
From the time that I was sure that he was gone, I, of course, was anxious for him and always wanted to know where he was and what kind of a situation he was in. And also I wanted to get back to my own people here in California. So it's sort of like when you lose someone, which of course he hadn't died by then, but there are so many details, about getting transportation, because that wasn't very easy during the war. And so that took up some of my mental time. But yeah, I just waited from letter to letter.
Were you excited when you got a letter?
Oh, whenever I got a letter, yes, I was very excited. I read it over and over and over. And of course, I wrote to him quite a bit more than he was able to write to me.
Did you like getting your letters?
And I think that he benefited by getting my letters, yes. I think that it probably helped some.
At what point did you go back to California? How long were you in Fayetteville for?
I believe I was in Fayetteville for probably until the first week in June. And I made my way back to Fullerton.
In 43 or 44?
43.
43. So you went back to Fullerton. Were you at all in contact? Did this bring you closer at all to his family? Were you in touch with them during this time?
During the time that I lived then after that and was in the war effort one way or another, I would be in touch with his mother, and I believe Klaus had gotten into the Navy quite soon, and she was alone, and so she and I would go and stay with her, and I would go to Uncle Teo's productions. Uncle Teo produced what were some of the musicals. I can't really remember. It was light opera. And it was fun because you could go backstage, and I remember Kata saying, "Watch out, get away, move," because they were moving flats, and there were all kinds of wires on the floor, and I was just bumbling around, and she yanked me around, which was fine. And we did that quite often from time to time.
Was Teo a nice man?
I beg your
Was
pardon?
Teo a nice guy?
Oh, yes. Uncle Teo was, and let's see, I can't remember his wife's name. Anyway, and then I got acquainted with Kurt and his family, and Fritz and his family. They were all very hospitable and seemed to enjoy seeing me. And then, of course, I'd go and see my friend Jean also. So,
What was his mother's name? And I know that you said it before, but just if you could say it, what was his mother's name, and what was she like? What was her demeanor? How did she react to her sons? Was she the doting mother? You said she was dramatic.
Ted's mother's name was, I believe, Katerina, and she was called Kata. And to me, she was not a doting mother, but she liked to have him and Klaus be what she would consider correct. And she was an aspiring actress, I believe. In fact, she did get a part in a play. It wasn't one of Uncle Teo's, but it was a play that was...
Just repeat that last line. I'm sorry, go ahead. She got a part in a play. You could just repeat it because the bell was going off.
Oh, all right. Kata got a part in a play, and it was not Uncle Teo's production, I'm almost sure, because it was in a large theater, and I attended, of course. And I don't really remember very much I don't think I went backstage at that time. But anyway, that was kind of fun.
Once she accepted the fact that you were married to her son and you were in fact his wife, and she couldn't do anything about your upbringing and being from Iowa and everything, was she a little more hospitable and was she nicer?
Kate came to like my mother and father, I believe, a great deal. And I don't know exactly why she related to them, but they were just real people, and maybe she needed that along with all of her other ideas. But for me, I think she would have liked it a lot better if I'd been a showgirl. And I was trying to be a model, and she knew very well that I couldn't be a movie actress because I was way too tall. She said, well, maybe you could be a comedian. And so, no, I couldn't be a movie actress. But I was trying to be a model because I could have done that. And I was going to a modeling school called Jean Valjean. And they came to want me to be their cover girl on their brochure. And by that time, I had met Ken. This was after they had declared Ted gone. And so I happened to be home in Fullerton because I'd gotten the mumps. And they called, Jean Valjean called and wanted me to come and be photographed for that. And I was talking to them, and Ken kept saying, hang up, hang up. And I was having...
One second. Would you like something? Oh, yeah. All right, so just to backtrack a bit, when you spent time with Ethel Betry, did she speak about her husband a lot? Did she seem to miss him? How was she in the wake of his death?
When Wilhelm died, Kata was desolate. She adored him. And she was just not herself sometimes. Then, especially when Ted was declared gone, she just really went off the deep end for a short time.
How so?
Well, I'm not sure exactly what happened, but I know she had redecorated her house and she started scratching the wallpaper, her beautiful wallpaper, off the wall, and was acting terrible. And she had gone to a doctor, or somebody had taken her to a doctor, and he had asked me to help with her.
You said you don't have to retell the story, but that the letters, the last letters, may have having an impact.
Those last few letters seemed now, in retrospect, to be a kind of a goodbye. All of this has been a closed chapter in my life for so many years that it's not really easy for me to remember. I think I've remembered most of it accurately, but at least the flavor of it is accurate, I think. But when Ken and I got together, it was something that definitely was not discussed. And so it has been out of my mind, really, for a while. But as you might know, I wasn't going to forget Ted. But still, it wasn't uppermost in my life.
Do you remember,
for a long time.
Do you remember, were you still hoping, it had been a long time, I'm sure it was very frustrating to have somebody that you loved, away, like a lot of war brides, and you were waiting for him to come home. Had you given up hope, or were you continuously hoping that he would come back. Do you remember getting the telegram after the bell? God, these minutes go so fast.
Yeah, it's every 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
After I got the telegram saying that Ted was missing, I certainly didn't think he was dead. After I got the message that they said he was dead, I don't believe they told me that they had his body. And even after Ken and I were married, I remember he and I talked a little bit about it, and I thought maybe he really isn't gone. What would I do, being married to Ken? And we talked about that a little bit. And it's something when you don't actually see the person, you don't have closure. And you just don't. So I think that that has been something that I've lived with for quite all this time. And why he would do all of those dangerous things, it has crossed my mind to be angry with him because he didn't have to do that. Number one, he didn't even have to go into the army, being Jewish, being German. He wasn't a citizen even when he first went in. So there was a little bit of anger, and then I remember that as a 19-year-old, a 20-year-old, I didn't think anything could kill me. And I'm sure he had that thought too. I don't think he really thought that he was going to be killed. So I'm not angry anymore.
What was the relationship you had with his mother after did she cling on to you more, or was she?
The relationship that I had with Kate afterwards was not really warm, but it was, as I said, we just went to Uncle Teo's place. We got together from time to time. She introduced me to a friend of hers, the Fleischmans, I think. They had a big chicken farm. And it was probably, it was just borderline not very deep.
Not to sound trite or trivial, but can you describe your feelings that you had when you started to hear all this sad news?
Oh, when I first got the telegram, the first thing I did was contact Ted's mother, and I went to her house, and Uncle Teo was there, and I remember fixing lunch. I fixed cream tuna on toast. Funny thing, I was starting it, and I don't know if you know how to fix cream tuna on toast, but you fix a white sauce, and you have the fat in the pan, and you put the flour or whatever thickening you're going to use in, and you have to get that going, and then put the milk in. Well, Kata came bustling up, and she started putting bits of milk in, and we had to throw it out because all it did was just gum it up. So we started over, and I fixed the cream tuna, and we ate.
But was there, after you heard about that, you obviously met another man at this time, or how did that come about? How did you meet Ken Betry?
The way I met Ken was he worked at the News Tribune, and so did my sister. And he and Mary, I think, had a date or two. And as I said, I was home with the mumps, and he came to our house, and we would just sit around and drink tea and just be goofy. So he and I just started dating, and we had our first date on Valentine's Day, and we were married the 2nd of March. So I guess you'd say it was a whirlwind romance.
What year did you get married?
46.
So this is, you'd already heard that you'd been widowed?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Now, obviously getting to know him must have softened a lot of your anxiety or disappointment, or not even your grief.
Well, it had been more than a year that Ted had been gone. And yes, it was. And what was I? 22 then? 22.
Was getting the flag or having the Peter Baker come, was that closure for you, or was that even more of a blow, or?
When Peter Baker came and gave me the flag, it's a good thing my sister remembers it, because I was really fuzzy about that. I really don't remember it vividly. And there's a lot that I don't remember vividly. I don't know if I was blocking out what I was feeling or what.
Did any of Ted Bachenheimer's war buddies or army buddies ever try to get in touch with you after the war?
Yes. The youngest one that I had known in Fayetteville was Bud Carlson, and he came and visited me.
Was he in the same company with Ted, or?
I think so, yes. I believe they were in the same outfit.
What, so I'm trying to think, after that, did you keep in touch with Klaus Bachenheimer, or was it just a new life beginning and kind of a chapter closed?
After that, I did not keep in touch with Kata or Klaus. The next thing, contact that I had was, as I told you, Kata wanted to bring Ted back and bury him near his father. And I had to give permission for some reason or other. I have no idea why the Army insisted that I give permission, but I did so. reluctantly, actually, because it seemed pointless to me, but apparently it was important to his mother. And I don't know how important it was to Klaus. But anyway, I did give.
Why did you think it was pointless?
Why did I think it was not important? Because I really have never thought that the remains were the person, or are the person. The remains, the body is not what that person was anymore. So I guess that's just my feeling.
Did you ever visit the cemetery in Hallinger?
After Ken died,
Yeah, go ahead.
after Ken died, I thought that I would like to see where Ted was buried. My sister and her husband had gone when Kata brought his body back. And apparently she made quite a production of it. And Mary and I went where Mary remembered his body being buried, and it wasn't there. And that's when we found out that he and his father had been transferred to a different plot. And Kata's headstone was already there, waiting for her. And so, yes, I that's the only time I have gone to visit his grave.
So so you got married in 1946, and then bring me up to date.
We got married in, Ken and I got married on March 2nd, 1946 in Yuma, Arizona. And we came back and lived in Fullerton. And then we moved to Colorado Springs, which is a sister paper of the Santa Ana Register.
What did he do with the newspaper? What was his job?
He was ad salesman. Ken's job was display advertising. He sold and laid out ads. There's a trophy of his for one of his ad campaigns. And so then we came back to California to be closer to our parents. They were aging, and we, let me think, where did we move? We moved back to Fullerton for a while. Then we went to Redondo Beach, where he worked for the Breeze as a sales, display salesman. And then he was promoted to Culver City as ad manager. And we had, let me think, it was when we were in, it was in 1952 when we lived in Redondo Beach that Dan was born. It was in 1953 when we lived in Manhattan Beach when the girls were born.
The twins?
They're twins. And it was 1954 when we had moved to Hermosa Beach, where we bought our first house when Frank was born. And then let me think, Frank must have been about 8 when we moved to Washington State. We were there about 9 months, and Ken realized that we were in a family operation and there wasn't going to be any advancement. So he started looking around for a different job. So Ken found a job in Hawaii, and we lived in Kailua, where we bought our second house,
Do you remember that?
and lived there about 18 months. And we took a ship back to Los Angeles, where we stayed briefly, and Ken got word that, well, it was so brief and I was getting so frustrated, I said, go where you can find a job. And so there was an opening here in Porterville. So I said, go get that job. So he did. And that's why we've been here since 1965.
Did he like what he did? Was he?
Oh, he loved his work. For a brief time, he tried selling it was called tax control records. And he did okay with that, but he had been a printer's devil from the time he was about 13, I think. He went to Western State, Colorado, and worked there also at the newspaper. And then he went in, he came out to California and went into the Merchant Marine, and went all around he went many different places, but he was in the South Pacific, and he had a near miss torpedo. And then we met and were married.
Now, how many children and grandchildren and do you have great grandchildren?
No.
No. So how many children and grandchildren?
These, the 5 that you met, and then the 2 in Clovis.
Clovis, New Mexico?
No,
Oh.
up just right near, practically the same as Fresno.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think about all this interest of late? You know, when I called you on the phone out of nowhere, and it seems to have brought you back to meeting certain people and emails and things like that.
This has been very nice, meeting the Baldinos, for instance. I would like to meet Mr. Wolf. Are you going to go up there?
No, I might on another trip.
Oh,
I talked to him on the phone though.
oh, did
He's a very nice guy.
you? Yeah. And that, I think, has been really nice to be able to talk with these people that knew Ted.
Is it a strange thing to kind of dig up your past after a long?
Indeed it
Period of
is.
time.
It's a very strange thing to to dig this all up. As I say, it's just been a closed issue for years and years. Just-
Would your early life ever cross your mind, even in the midst of raising a family and doing things?
Well, I wouldn't say that it never crossed my mind, because you just don't. Of course, things cross my mind from time to time, but it wasn't anything that I dwelled on or had time for. You know, I had 4 kids, 2.5 and younger, all together at one time. And I was busy.
Did you go to Klaus Bachenheimer's funeral?
No.
Someone originally told me
I
you were.
didn't go. I didn't even know until, I didn't know that Klaus had died until Vernil sent me the Christmas card saying that he had died.
Had any of them ever tried to get in touch with you over the years before?
Yes, Klaus and his wife came out to California, I would say probably 87 maybe. And Klaus called and told me he and Vernil were coming out and they were going to be at a certain motel over close to where my sister has a place in Grover Beach. And so my sister and I met them, and we drove around and had a nice time together, had a meal together. And
Was he still exuberant after all the?
yes,
Was he what you remembered?
yes, he was. Yeah, he was about the same as he, essentially the same. Kind of a little brother type tease.
Did you talk about old times with him? Was it?
Yes, he told me. Oh, one time Mary and I were on a trip and we went through Las Vegas, and I knew his phone number, so I called. And that was shortly after his mother had died, so he told me about that. And that was, those 2 contacts were the last times that I had with Klaus.
So when you reflect back on everything, have you had a nice life?
Oh, I am so blessed. I have had a wonderful life. Ken was just perfect for me. I was so goofy and skittish, and he had no patience for that kind of thing, and he straightened me out in due time. I wouldn't say in short order, but in due time. By the time I was 25, I felt maybe I might have one or two cents. Before that, I don't think I had a lick of sense.
How about now?
Oh, well, I think I've got it together now.
Okay. Thanks very much for talking to us.
You're very welcome.
Cut.
Now we're gonna just, this way,